Happy Valentine's Day from Psyche Blossom. Hopefully, you're not spending this day alone. But unfortunately, the sad reality for a lot of us is that we are. And that's unfortunate because as much information as data collectors have on us, Google and Amazon, they could probably solve the loneliness crisis, couldn't they? But instead, they use that information to divide us to make their companies more profitable. Fixing the problem is obviously less profitable than being able to sell you a product that fills that void inside of you. Capitalism is all about making you feel like you need more. The unfortunate thing about the loneliness pandemic is we're being programmed to think each other are the enemy. Genders are against each other. Misogyny is at its all-time high. People are using these platforms to spread hate. They're not actually doing the work on themselves to actually learn the patterns that create these situations in society. But obviously, these companies depend on these cognitive traps to keep you hooked on their platforms, to keep you spending money. It's a divide and conquer mentality. People don't actually look inside themselves. People are so defensive when it comes to actually believing that they're the problem. They never actually uncover the actual patterns. And obviously, companies depend on your ignorance when it comes to this. They don't want you to uncover these patterns. They want you to be a blind consumer. I would have never discovered these patterns inside myself if it wasn't for the hardest breakup in my life. A relationship really provides that therapeutic environment for you to really be yourself. You really show your truest self to that person, and they tend to learn a lot more about you than everyday people. Because of those insights, your partner is able to understand more about you than pretty much any other person in the world. And after our breakup, I had to examine the patterns that made me a toxic person, not just point the finger. I think that's the problem with dating is we don't have any accountability anymore. We've forgotten accountability. We blame the other gender more than we dig into our own flaws. There's this guy, Ho Math, I'm gonna do a video about him and his bias, but our biases, our attachment styles, our consensus bias, our cognitive bias, our belief that we are right might actually be the problem. What I learned after my breakup is that most people rush into relationships and they never take that time to heal. And what taking that time to heal and actually learn who I was, what that showed me was that the reason I kept getting into shitty relationships wasn't because women are stupid and evil. It was because I attracted narcissistic people into my life. I had such a pattern inside of me that it made me available to toxic people. It wasn't that the people themselves in the world were toxic, and now that is also part of it that society perpetuates these toxic behaviors. But it's not that women or men are all fucked up in some particular way. Of course, obviously, men and women have different problems catered to our particular niches in the universe. But it's not that being a man or being a woman is the problem innately. In fact, if anything, the problem is having a brain. It kind of turns out that intelligence is a double-edged sword. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. Once it learns these patterns, it's really convenient for your brain to rely on these patterns as the source of reality. That's why it's easier to be like, all men are some way, all women are some way, than to be like, this particular person must have been this particular way because of how her parents grew up and how her past relationships treated her, and she had a really rough time at work the day we broke up, blah, 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 blah. It's more difficult for your brain to paint a more nuanced picture of the universe. It's easier for people to say Donald Trump is evil and communism is the right way to go, and capitalism is bad, and that, it's easier to say that than to actually look at the system piece by piece and see what the problems are. Is Donald Trump the problem, or is the system that allows people to become Donald Trumps the problem? Is capitalism the problem, or is the ability to completely abuse capitalism the problem? Are men the problem, or is it that the social constructs that men are forced into force them to be a certain way? And likewise with women. It's kind of like if you think about with a cat. A cat that loves you is gonna bring you a dead mouse. See, to the cat, a mouse is a treat, a delicious treat. If I bring my family cats a dead mouse, a cat brings a fellow cat a dead mouse. That's a wonderful gift. They don't understand that a human being thinks a dead mouse is disgusting and that you would be mortified by that. But you, as a human being, you understand when your cat brings you a dead mouse or a dead bird, that it's a symbol of affection. In that same way, men and women don't speak the same language. I mean, instead of like actually understanding how to communicate with each other, well, social media has made that even more difficult. We've lost a lot of our social skills. And I'll be the first to admit, I have 3 children and I've never approached a woman in person. That's a skill that people developed a long time ago. I had this person who is a member of Gen Z, and I don't even really want to talk about this, but I feel like this is very important to mention how technology actually literally erodes our mental faculties over time as a society, not just as individuals. There's a person that I encountered who did not know how to count. And then a way to empathize, I was talking with a friend about this, how frustrating this was to witness this kind of happening to society, that like, okay, people don't know how to count change these days. This is how crippled we are by technology, that our kids don't know how to count now. And I told this to a friend, and they go, ha ha ha, I bet they don't know how to read an analog clock either. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, like, I was like 14 years old before I took the time to be like, okay, wait a minute, I don't know how to read this thing. Because like, why would you take the time to learn how to read an analog clock? If you've been making plastic transactions your whole life, you can buy everything in the universe on your phone. Why would you take the time to count and change? Why would your brain use the energy to learn these tools, these things? When's the last time you remembered a phone number? Okay? Before you start pointing fingers at Gen Z saying 6-7, or whatever the shit they do these days. Think about the ways that your brain is already crippled by technology. Whose phone numbers do you remember? Do you remember anybody's phone number? I remember my first girlfriend's phone number, and that's like the last thing my brain remembers. I guess I remember my last girlfriend's phone number too. But your brain outsources that information. And it's not like that's a old thing. I think that's part of how human beings are evolving. And this is really getting away from the point. The problem with dating is that we're not aware enough of ourselves. We're not doing the work on ourselves to fix the patterns in ourselves that keep us inundated by toxic bullshit. I'm trying to not cuss this much on this channel, but I guess we'll work on that in the next video. This whole series is going to be about cognitive bias. Obviously, I can't fix dating in one video. I can say that the problems are deeper than women are. I am coming after Homath, and I'm coming after all these content creators who really don't understand the psychology of relationships and are making videos that are actually making the problem worse. They're coming at these ideas from super emotional angles. And I get it. Like, I have emotions too. I'm a human. I deleted 70 videos leading up to this video because I've been going through some shit. And I didn't really want to put that angry videos on this channel. But I did want to start this campaign of love and sincerity with cognitive bias. This is the 0th video in the series. The next video is going to be laying out what cognitive bias is. And in the next few videos, I'm going to go through the different cognitive biases of different kinds of people and the kinds of problems they create. Because it creates more problems than just the dating problem. The whole classist situation, the reason people are poor and in poverty, the reason there is even violence still in our world. If we are to reach some level of utopian society, progression. Mental health is going to have to be something we integrate into the fabric of our society, not just something on the side on the weekend, or when the shit gets tough. Mental health needs, we can't have crazy people just, destroying their lives, and like people are out here doing this work, but like we can't even like live in a society where people aren't being manipulative, distrustful, and crazy. People don't know how to be their authentic selves. Like people are always wearing masks. There's so many issues, right? And really the only way to even start to piece apart what these issues are will be to be able to look inside yourself and understand like how many of my behaviors am I actually choosing, and how much of my reality, how much of what I'm doing, how much of my thinking, my behaviors, my habits, how much of that was programmed in my family, before I was born, into my family tree. How many of these traumas are things that I could just decide to not participate in anymore? And, how many lies am I telling myself still? Because like everything you believe about the victimhood of your reality is not true. I mean, some of it is. Some of it is. We're definitely an oppressed class, and billionaires and blah, blah, blah. That is completely true. But I don't think humans are all out to get us, and that everyone is literally distrustful. I think people are scared. People don't know that they can show up as themselves and be accepted. But the truth is, if everyone showed up as themselves, everyone would be free to show up as themselves, and we wouldn't care. We wouldn't be so judgmental of each other. People are really weird and really crazy, and I guess the sooner we admit that to ourselves, the sooner we can show up as our authentic selves. And I think that will be like the first step to coming together and actually solving, all these problems that keep us separated. Anyway, this has been a nice little happy ramble. I don't know if it's happy, whatever. It's a ramble. It's been a ramble for Valentine's Day. A lovey ramble, whether or not it's happy. And as always, stay mindful. And I wanted to put a new tagline on here, but I don't remember what it was, so obviously it's not yet. It's still